Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to part 3 of our Creating Scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator using free resources as much as I can. All right. Last time after installing the SDK, we copied a directory or folder. I'm from the old school. Before folders were named folders, they were called directories. So I use those words interchangeably. Anyway, we copied simple scenery to our tutorial directory, and we named that Tut1, if you remember. And then we did a whole bunch of other edits. However, there's one edit that I forgot to tell you about. If you go into the package sources, and by the way, you only need to do this the very first time that you copy over a simple scenery folder, okay, as a boilerplate. Once you do this for your scene, you won't have to do this again. All right, so go into package sources and find the scene folder, and you're going to see an XML called objects. This was created by the sample, and it has 2 objects in it that if you don't delete this, those 2 objects will remain in this XML. And they're 2 objects that were placed on Key West Airport. And if you leave them in here, they're going to be in Key West no matter where you're creating your scenery. And it will cause issues for people that are flying into Key West if they have your scenery. All right. So find the objects XML, and basically what this XML is just a list of everything that you have in your scene. Your buildings, your ground textures, your runways, your taxi signs, everything that you put in your scene goes into this XML. So if I left this objects XML the way it is, and I put it into my new project, and I add my buildings and stuff, those 2 objects will remain. All my new objects get written to this file, okay? So when you first set up when you first set up your scenery directories for the first time, go ahead and just simply delete that objects XML. Then when you build your project, it creates a brand new one, and it won't have those objects in there, okay? So that is step 1 for cleaning up what we did last time. Now, the next step is we're going to create another asset for our scene. If you remember, we went in and we renamed the model lib folder. The model lib is where all of your building structures and stuff are going to be in. Your models that you create in Blender, you'll export them into this directory. Okay. Now, there's another asset that's called an asset. So model lib is an asset. There's another kind of asset that's going to be important later on, and that's a material library. Okay. A material library is a folder that contains images or textures and stuff that you use for like ground textures, okay, or runway numbers and taxiway paint jobs and all that kind of stuff, okay? There's 2 ways to create this asset, and I'm going to show you both of them. The second one will be in the next video, but one way is going to be in this video. All right, so if you go into the package sources folder, you create a new folder. So right click and do a new folder, and call this, for this one, we're going to call this Tut1-materials. okay? Then in this directory, double click that, open that up, and right click and add another folder and make this a capital T and make it textures. Okay? So you'll see in the tree over here, you'll see our project, TUT1. In package sources, you're going to see a scenery directory. You're going to see a TUT1 materials, which we just created. And inside of that, you're going to have textures with a capital T. Okay? And then you're also going to have that TUT1 material library, material lib that we created previously. And inside of that, you have a texture, small t, no s at the end, that contains all the textures that you use for your models. Okay? So, slow down, take a screenshot, look at the structure here. Okay? So you know how this is set up. Now, our project doesn't know anything about this material directory yet. All right, so we need to tell our XML where to find this new asset. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to open up two files. The first one that you're going to open up is in your package definitions. You're going to open up the TUT1 XML. So open that up in NotePad++. Okay, I'm going to open up my NotePad++ here. And here's the XML that has a list of all of our assets. We have our splash screen, which is our content info. We have our model lib that we created last time. And inside of that, you can see where we called it tut1-model lib. Okay, that's our package sources. But we want to create another asset group for our materials. Now, you don't have to understand all this XML tags and stuff, but if you go into, let me minimize this for a second. If you go up to the SDK samples and you go into Simple Airport and you go into package definitions for Simple Airport and open the My Company-Airport XML into Notepad++. Okay, so open that. You will get in Notepad++ two tabs. You want them both open in Notepad++. Okay, now what we're going to do is in the My Company-Airport XML, we are going to copy the asset group My Materials. So grab that asset group all the way down to the closing tag for asset group for that particular group. Does that make sense so far? I hope so. All right, now Control C to copy that. Whoops. Let's try this again. I did that wrong. Sorry. I hit the wrong key. All right. Control C. So that's now copied into my mouse memory. And then go back to your TUT1 XML and come down to after my scene. It doesn't really matter. No, we're going to put it after my model lib. So put your cursor at the closing tag for that asset group and hit enter. And then Control V. And let's clean up a couple things here. We're going to backspace this here so our tag lines up. Now we have a materials asset group, okay? But we need to rename it so it knows where to find it. So if you come down here to package sources, we renamed that material to TUT1 1 dash, okay? And then when we create, when we build our project, we want it to have a unique name. So replace my material, just replace my with tut1 dash, okay? So now this material library, it will find its resources in tut1 materials, but when it creates the package, it's going to have a tut1 materials folder for that. Kind of like the model lib, you want to rename that so it's something unique, so it doesn't conflict with somebody else's material library. Then when you have that change, just simply do a save. Now on the My Company Airport one, you can just close it down because we're not going to save that. All right, so we've made this change where we've added an asset group to our project using the XML editor, okay? So now you can close that out. Now, one more little piece of housekeeping. I know these first few videos are really dry because of all the setup. One more little piece that I like to do when I'm creating a scene is, before I even create my first model, is I come into the tools directory and the bin directory for the SDK, and I copy the fs package tool.exe. I right click and drag that into my scenery, the very first directory, the tut1 that we first created, and I copy that in there. Okay, so if we go into the tut1 directory, you're going to see that we have that executable in there. Now, you don't have to do that, but it's convenient to do that because you have the executable in the scene directory that you're working on. So when you want to build your project, and you always have to build a project every time you make a change, with that tool being in that directory, all you need to do is take the XML and drop it on top of the exe, and it will run it and compile it. Okay, now this tool allows you to build a project outside of the simulator. Okay, it runs a little slower, but you don't have to go into the simulator to build your project. All right. Because one thing that you're going to notice is when you're working in the simulator, in the SDK environment, the edit environment, your computer uses more resources because you're essentially in the simulator, just like if you are flying. So your graphics cards, your fans are going to be running and everything like that. So when I create a scenery, I try to minimize how much time I'm actually in the SDK in the sim. I try to get all my models and all my textures and all that kind of stuff done, and minimize the amount of computer resources that the sim is using when I'm creating my scenes. Does that make sense? I hope it does. But anyway, it works for me. Now, before you build your project for the first time, go into that material, that textures directory for your materials. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put a texture into that directory, even if you're not using it. Because if you don't do that, your build might fail. So I have some custom textures that I made for some of my airports and stuff, and I'm just going to take one And it doesn't matter what kind of what PNG is in there. It could be a picture of your child or your pet or something, and you can delete it later after you put some actual textures in there. But it needs something in that directory when you first do your build. So I'm going to take these taxiway markings and I'm just going to drop that in my textures directory, and I'm going to copy it there. Okay. So if we go back into TUT1 to review, we've created the directory structure last time. We've made our edits to our XMLs. We have added a new asset in our package definition XML. So I'll right click that and open that with NotePad. We've added the material library. All right. And that material library is right down here, TUT1, with the textures directory. And inside the textures directory, we've added a PNG texture for just a space holder right now. Okay. And then finally, we made a copy of the FS package tool executable, and we copied that into our TUT1, our project, for convenience. All right. Now, the next step is to build your project for the first time. And all you have to do is take your TUT1 XML, or whatever you named it, click and drag it on top of that exe, and that's going to run the build for the first time. So just release it, and over here I got another monitor that it's running on. So here I scooted it over. Now it's running the build. The first time that you run a build, it takes a while. So I'm going to pause until that's done. Okay, so a bunch of stuff flashes across the screen. It took maybe 2 minutes. All right, but it's no big deal. All right, anytime that you build a project, and we'll talk about building a project later on, but anytime that you build a project, if you build it outside of the sim, it takes a little longer because it's making resource calls through the system and not the simulator. But you don't have to have your simulator running to build a project. That's basically what I'm trying to tell you. All right. Now you'll notice that it says one failed. When you build outside, you're going to get one fail. All right. You're always going to get one fail, and that unless you have a splash, and we'll talk about that later. And the reason that this failed is because I don't have a splash screen for my scenery. All right, that's why we got one failed. If I had two failed, then something else had an issue that we have to investigate. All right, so we built our project. So all I have to do, like, is just hit any. Sorry about that. The video cut out. So I had to do a little bit editing here. So where I left off was, so we built the project outside of the simulator, and now this is the results of what you get. All right. So now it adds 2 new folders to our TUT1. It adds the package int folder, and we won't really talk about that one too much. We won't talk about that one at all for now. We'll come back to it some other time. But it also creates the actual packages folder. Inside the packages folder is your actual package. It is what you will copy this folder into your community folder, and then your project will be live for Flight Simulator. Also, if you're putting this up on flightsim.to, this is the file that you'll zip into a zip file and upload that to flightsim.to or wherever you're putting your scenery for distribution. Anyway, I hope that this video, I know it was extremely dry and boring, but the next video will get into the actual SDK and show you around that environment, okay? So I thank you very much for putting up with me, and you know, subscribe if you will. Again, I do have a Patreon page, and I also have a Buy Me Coffee account. If you'd like to support my work here, both of them are under the name My Physical World. My Physical is one word. If you feel inclined, but if you don't, I understand. But I thank you for your time, and I will see you on part 4 when we actually get into the SDK. All right, we'll see you guys later. Bye.